2, 1.
Welcome to this session of the Mayor's Update. I'm William Kay, today's moderator. This is listener-supported KBBG 88.1 FM Waterloo. And now, I am pleased to introduce Waterloo's Mayor, the Honorable Buck Clark. Welcome, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning, William. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Yes, and you're providing us with some pretty decent weather now.
Well, today is, we've had a little bit of rain in the last couple, well, we've had an appropriate amount of rain this spring. In this area, boy, some areas are getting just hammered. And we're very fortunate, thank you God, and I'll pound on some wood here, that we haven't gotten those heavy rains, so, yeah.
Well, just a little diversion, and you weren't mayor then, but our last flood was, what, 2008?
2008, well, there was one in 2010, which was not nearly as significant as 2008, but that first year that I was mayor, in that spring, we had some fairly high water. We had some flooding, backwaters, basement backups and street flooding and stuff, but it wasn't anything like 2008.
And since 2008, there's been some flood mitigation work done.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Could you maybe...
Well, the biggest thing and the biggest visible thing are all the pump stations that we have now around town. And it's tough to go someplace in different parts of any place in town without seeing some of those new big construction projects. And those are pump stations that will help us, God forbid, should anything like that ever happen, we can get that. We can pump that water that's supposed to be on the dry side of the levees, we can get it on the wet side of the levees and get it where it's supposed to be. And we did not have that capability in 2008.
Because a lot of the storm drains flow into the river, and once the river is above the storm drain outlet, then of course you are subject to backup.
We certainly are subject to that. So we've taken millions of dollars worth of improvements to our flood mitigation efforts, should that ever happen again.
And those $1 million is a good investment because of the millions of dollars that would cost us to repair and to redo all the damage that's done by flooding.
That's correct.
Yeah, it's nice to know that progress is continuing. And let's just hope we don't get 2 inches of rain in 30 minutes like we do sometimes in that thing. Just a couple things. I wanted to mention that I saw in the paper where the city is spending $214,500 on a used trommel screen, which is kind of a cylinder that rotates and sifts out things at different levels, basically being used to help with the backlog of stuff that comes from the yard waste facility down on Easton. Could you tell us a little bit about that? The thing I wanted to kind of mention to the citizens was that there is a product there from this trommel that you can actually use, and it's free of charge, is it not?
Absolutely, William. And it's good that you are mentioning this, because I would imagine that there are still many of our residents that don't realize multiple things about that site. First of all, there is a place that you can take your yard waste. You don't have to drive down to the dead end street and look around seeing if anybody's watching and dumping it in the
like they do in the county. Yes.
Yeah, so there is a place to take your leaves and your yard waste and your limbs that you trim and all that stuff, and that is on Easton Avenue down by the waste treatment facility. It's at the dead end down there, and it's used to death, so we get a lot of material down there. And this is also a really good time to mention to your listeners, William, that site is a free site, and it is intended to be used by Waterloo residents to dispose of their yard waste. It is not intended to be used by commercial landscaping people who do this for a living and don't want to have to drive out to the landfill to dispose of their material. And we are cracking down on that. There has been a tremendous amount of abuse of that facility by commercial landscapers.
Even people from other cities.
Other counties, other cities, all over the place. They know they can bring it there for free, and we have been lax on enforcing that. We are tightening that. We now have a guard check. We now are having it staffed, and you will be asked, and I hope not offended, but appreciate the fact that you'll probably be asked for a driver's license or some kind of identification that shows you live within the city of Waterloo in order to dump your stuff there. Having said all that, it's a great site. It produces a lot of yard waste, which we try to manage, which can become an issue, but we do, and we windrow that stuff, and we compost it, and we turn it, and We produce two products down there that can both be picked up at that site. One is a mulch that's wood chips and stuff, you know, people can be used for mulch. It's good mulch, and it's free. You just need to bring some kind of a container or a pickup down there, and have to provide the sweat equity to get it in your vehicle, but it's there for free. And then we also provide some incredibly good, rich compost. Big pile of black dirt down there that, again, you just provide the vehicle to come get it. It's free to the public, come get it and use it. It's good stuff. My wife and I use a lot of it.
Well, and I know there's a lot of people that live in town that are doing some gardening and stuff and just need maybe a small, maybe 50 pounds or less of topsoil just to fill in the holes and things like that. And this would be a good product for that.
Just for an example, we had an enormous ash tree removed from our front yard back when they were taking it. We live in the Highland District. And the folks came and ground out the stump, and then the city came in and put some dirt in it and seeded it, et cetera, just like they're doing all over town, which is a great deal. But my wife is extra special meticulous with our yard, and in that process there was a bit of a divot there, and my wife just wasn't going to be satisfied with that. And so what we did is we went down to the yard waste site and got a couple of wheelbarrow loads of compost and put that on there and smoothed it out real nice, put some grass seed in it, and it just looks great. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, and I think people should go down and take a look at that. All you need is a pail or bucket if you don't need a whole lot.
Sure.
And, rather than go to one of the local places and pay for it by the bag.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
This is really a pretty good deal, and a good return on the investment we have in that yard waste facility.
Well, we hope so, but again, you know, we want to stress the fact that it's for Waterloo residents, and you know, we put I think you were still there when we bought the grinder. That was I was a lot of money for that grinder, and that thing is what turns that into the mulch, which then becomes the compost and so forth. But yeah, we've got a lot of money in that site, so we hope that people take advantage of it.
Yeah, and not to give any plugs, but if you know where People's Appliance is, the road is right, goes down past there, and then it's pretty well marked as to where it is if anybody's not been there before. And
if you're going out on 218 to Crossroads and take a left at the stoplights there at, Mitchell, excuse me, one brain dead, turn left at Mitchell, down right before the UAW, the Union Hall there, and you'll drive right into the front door of it, so. Yeah. No, not quite, you gotta make one turn, but it's well signed.
It's well signed. And there's also down that area too, some very nice recreational area too.
The Riverview Recreation Area, it used to be the Mitchell Pits for those old timers that remember. It's a great area now to go down and picnic and swim, etc.
You actually can swim down there.
You can, yes.
I know you can fish. I know a lot of people go down there for fishing and so forth. And then, of course, there is a place now for RVs to ride in that area, is there not? Your four-wheelers?
Oh, the four-wheelers, yeah. RV, I'm thinking of a camping trailer. I know. RV, the four-wheelers and the three-wheelers, there's actually a trail through there, and it's used constantly.
But I just see one of those 40-foot RVs just going over one of those humps. That would be kind of interesting to watch. Another issue, not really related, but the county board approved the use of, or bought a cat over a deer loader. And I just think back in 2004 when I was watching it, we had that controversy also. You weren't mayor then either, but.
It wasn't, but I was on the council.
Yes.
I remember the controversy very well.
Yeah, we could really discuss that because John Deere is a solid contributor to the community. There's just no doubt about it. They bring in a lot of visitors, they do a lot of business here, they have a foundation that contributes and so forth. The problem I see is that this is free enterprise. When you talk about what things cost, you have a specification the city puts out for any piece of equipment, and then the bids have to comply with the specifications. And of course a CAT or a CASE vehicle could very well conform to specifications and could be less expensive. So the question is, do we stay loyal to John Deere? And my feeling is that, just my personal feeling is that these are local merchants that are selling these things, not necessarily the corporations. So I don't know, what's your feeling on that?
Did you notice it wasn't raining out today, William, by the way?
Okay, well, I'll defer to political discretion in that case.
No, you know, let me attempt to answer it, because it's a very, very legitimate question, and it's a very tough question. As you properly stated, we're required to go to bid on those kind of, those large items, those large purchase items. And we did have a situation, actually, if you remember back in 2004 when that happened, we had an individual stepped up and contributed the difference in the cost between, I can't remember what other brand it was, and we ended up purchasing the Deere piece of equipment. It puts politicians in a very tough situation because, my God, without John Deere in our community, we wouldn't have a community, quite honestly, literally, and quite literally. But without the Case dealer and the Cat dealer and the Massey Ferguson dealers, we wouldn't have a community either. Those people have to make a living also. It's a very difficult situation, and particularly if the bids happen to be relatively close. I'm just glad that that was the county that had to make that decision and not the city council. And you know, I think each case has to be looked at individually and discussed and debated, and look at the price difference, and eventually there will be a vote by a body, and that will determine what piece of equipment gets purchased. It's a very difficult situation.
Well, let me ask you another question. I know that Leisure Services actually bids out grass cutting for a lot of the parks and so forth. Is that true?
Well, to an extent, but we mow most of our own.
Okay.
The stuff that we own, we mow most of that. We hire an awful lot of part-time help in the summertime to just do mowing. But we, no, I don't believe we contract. We contract our complaint mowing, William, but I don't think that we contract much, if any, of our park mowing and our right-of-way mowing and stuff like. We do that ourselves. Leisure Service doesn't.
And I think they do, because I usually see the red trucks that pick up the equipment and so forth. But at one time I thought that a certain amount of mowing was a third party, because I remember that there were bids that were opened up at the council meeting.
That's true. I think the majority of it now is done by Leisure Services.
And I noticed that in fact, I think I've never seen anything other than a green tractor on the mowing crew.
Right. We try very hard to give John Deere the benefit of the doubt, but again, it's a difficult situation, and I'm glad we didn't have to make it at this time.
And that's true. Going on to something completely different, we mentioned that Moody maintained its city bond rating.
Yeah.
And that's, they call that a AA2A or something of that sort. Could you explain a little bit, what is that all about?
I will, William, and you know, to a lot of people, I'm sure they say, well, okay, so we have a bond rating, so it's a AA2, so who cares? Who really cares? And in honesty, everybody should care, because our bond rating, there are two rating services. There's Moody's and there's Standard & Poor's, S&P, and there may be more. Those are the two major ones, primary ones that issue ratings to cities. Your bond rating is a major factor, maybe the determining factor of how much your money costs when you borrow it. When you sell bonds, when you borrow money, the rate that you pay can be tied very closely to your bond rating. The better the bond rating that the city has, the cheaper that they can get money, and the easier it is for them to get money. If you have a low bond rating, people are going to be reluctant to buy your bonds in the first place, and if they do, they're going to be charging a much higher rate. AA2 is a very good rating. There's only one above that, AA1, that is better than us. In a day and age where many large cities are getting bond reductions, we were able to keep our bond rating for another year, which is a very significant indicator that we are managing the citizens' money well. We are not overly indebted, we are not stretching ourselves, etc., that we are doing a good job managing money. And this happens once a year. Moody's is in all over the place. We, generally speaking, we go to Chicago. Our bond, Spear Financial, who helps us with selling our bonds, Michelle Wiedner and I go and put our pitch to Moody's. They look at a lot of different factors in the city, and they determine where we should be. And it is a big deal, and it's a big deal to us that we were able to maintain our AA2 rating, and always wish we could get a bump up, but maybe someday, but at this point, it was a feather in our hat with the market being what it is, the climate being what it is, life being what it is, that we were able to keep our good rating.
Yeah, Moody takes into account the prosperity of the community,
They do.
the potential for problems in terms of downturns and that sort of thing.
They do. We got dinged, not downgrades, but a couple of things this year that probably prevent us from bumped up. And one thing we absolutely can't control, and it's an unfortunate part of the equation, but it is an important part of the equation. They recognize socioeconomic conditions within the city. And Waterloo is a very diverse community. We have a lot of things to be very proud of that we celebrate. But our socioeconomic status is not like I don't know, Marin County, California, something where we have bazillionaires and tons of them living in our community. So that worked to our disadvantage this year, but on the other hand, it's a very positive part for the community.
And while John Deere was laying off, we still had VGM expanding, and the Hunts plant is expanding, and some other, so it was actually kind of a pretty good balance.
It was a balance, and it's ironic that you mentioned John Deere again in this conversation, because Moody's certainly mentioned that, and we had a conversation about those layoffs, and they're pretty astute with what they do. They recognize the fact that the farm economy is a fluctuating economy that has its ups and that it has its downs, and that John Deere in its employment is still above, even after those layoffs, is still at a plus over what it was in the bad days. So they recognize that, and they also recognize the expansion in, you already mentioned, the other considerable investments that ConAgra and VGM and others have made in the community. So that shows a great deal of strength in our economy.
Well, what's interesting too is even in these bad times, we still have a positive job growth.
Yeah.
It may not be as, and I only have figures that go to 2013, but where we had a 0.4%, which is actually better than negative, of course. And before that, we were talking about 2%, or a little over 2% the previous year. So even so, that's not like a job loss.
That's correct.
You know, so
that's correct. Our unemployment rate continues to be very strong, very good. There are many communities that will die for, what are we, 4.5 or 4 and something percent unemployment.
4.4% is, I think, the last number for Waterloo.
Yeah, it's just still pretty good.
And when you consider that we're about 10% under what the cost of living is nationwide, so that's pretty good. But one thing we should mention about this is, why do we have bonds? I mean, what are they for?
Well, bonds are, it's another term for loaning money. You know, we sell bonds, which is basically, in layman's terms, we're borrowing money that we have to pay back at a particular interest rate. So the Waterloo issues bonds. We have a bond sale. Our bond sale was last Wednesday, a week ago yesterday. And it goes on the bond market. People invest in those bonds, generally banks or conglomerates or people that do that for a living. And they pay us for our bonds, and we pay them back with whatever rate is appropriate at that time. We have always been, in the last several years, been pretty fortunate with our bond rate. It did go up this year. Over last year's, we were at 2.75%, which is still under 3%, which is pretty good money. It's not at the 1.7 that we were a couple of years ago, but the market is changing too. So a bond is just the way for the city to finance large projects.
And I think the difference is that it's backed by it's backed differently than, say, just a loan would be.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, in respect, it still is collateral. I mean, we have to have the ability to pay those bonds back.
Yeah, that's right. And some cities have had trouble with their bonds, like Detroit, for example.
Very much so. You bet. Well, Waterloo, Bill, in the 80s. I mean, when I don't think it's been 20, 25 years ago. Our bonds were almost a junk bond status, and we were in pretty dire straits. And we've climbed way out of that situation.
If you've just joined us, you're listening to the Mayor's Update. We're speaking to the Honorable Mayor Buck Clark. I'm William Kay, your host. Just to turn the conversation around a little differently, now you've been mayor for how many years now?
5.5.
It may seem like more.
5.5, yeah, at the end of this month, it'll be 5.5.
And quite honestly, a lot of nice things have happened to the community since you've been mayor, and you can take credit for it, but the downtown area has really been almost, well, was in the process of being revitalized too, and it continues to be revitalized. A lot of great venues down there, some businesses established. It's becoming a place certainly to eat. And I would just like to kind of remind our listeners, we always hear this thing from the north side of town, there's nothing for us to do, everything on the south side of town. But within less than a mile from almost anybody in the north side of town are a lot of very nice eating places, some places to shop, entertainment, and that sort of thing. And care to comment on what's going on?
Well, William, we can spend a long time on all of the good things that are going on in Waterloo, but it is one of the most frustrating phrases that I hear when somebody says there's nothing to do in Waterloo, and trust me, I hear it, and I think, my goodness, pull your head out of the sand. Look at the things that there are to do. I mean, look at the paper, look at anywhere. My goodness, last weekend, there was a plethora of things that people could do and enjoy downtown and just around the town. So you're right, there is just a lot of really positive growth in our town. There's a lot of positive things going on. Downtown is just incredible. And you're also right that while I feel like I have kept that ball rolling and have added some substance to it as it is rolling, much of the downtown development was started a long time ago. Much of it really with John Roof, and then Tim Hurley kind of added his touch to a few things and kept it going, and I think I've done the same thing. I've added my touch to a few things. We've got some venues downtown that we didn't have when I took over that had my fingerprints on it, but the challenge is just to keep that going, particularly to have the fortitude to move forward when there is a small group of people who just think that we're doing the wrong thing and are very vocal about it.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's like we don't think of investment in the terms of investing in the community. What is going to attract people here, businesses, that sort of thing. A good educational system is essential. Also venues and things and cultural events and that sort of thing really would interest a business if they were going to locate here.
We are going to have, with the ribbon cutting of the John Deere Museum last Saturday morning, when that in and of itself is going to be literally an international tourist destination. When that campus gets developed and done, it's going to be, the face of Waterloo will change dramatically with that TechWorks campus, the Tech 1 building, the Tech 2 building, and by the way, the development agreement is on for this coming Monday for council to approve the third and final change to that development agreement. We think that at this point that financing is in place. We should see equipment on that site down there working in that within at least 90 days, hopefully by September.
Oh, that'd be great, because I see that,
Yeah.
one of the largest tourist attractions, I think, in the state of Iowa is probably the John Deere Tractor Works.
Well, I think so, yeah.
Not to mention the fact that they bring dealers in from all over the world, and people from all over the world actually come to see the way these tractors are built, so.
With as many people out there that have worked at one time or another at John Deere and put their hard sweat and blood and life's work into that, that you should just take the time to go down, if you have any interest in tractors, and look at that museum and walk through it. It's, I never worked at John Deere, so I don't have quite the connection, but that museum tells the story of the John Deere tractor as it relates to Waterloo.
And some very, very interesting pieces of equipment, very original pieces of equipment.
Original pieces of equipment, and it's incredible.
And just a couple of things too, it's also geared too for people who farm, because they can relate to that also.
Oh, yeah.
But I also want to mention too, that even as and thank you, by the way, for your comments about the blood and sweat that I spent.
Oh, did you? You're a
John Deere retired.
Okay, you're one of those guys who's got that fat retirement check, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm working here. It turns out though that if I go back and tour the Tractor Works, I find that it looks like a whole different facility than when I was there 10 or 15 years ago.
Don't you think that's a constant state of flux? But I mean, there again, we spent a lot of time today talking about John Deere. But John Deere has made an investment in in the city of Waterloo to the tune of almost $1 billion, that's billion with a B, dollars to that manufacturing facility down there. That's no small investment for a company to make in a community. We are trying our best to provide them a community that they can be proud of. So it's a partnership, William, and that thing has changed so dramatically, it's unbelievable.
Well, and of course, the ag market is, but overall, John Deere still does very, very well,
I
because
think-
it's much more diversified than.
I think they can pay the bills.
Let's hope so,
Yeah.
because I expect them to check every month.
Yeah.
The other thing that was kind of interesting, which I think helps downtown, is there's a pretty good movement for people moving down into the urban area. This facility where the Grand Hotel was, isn't that going to have some residents too eventually when they get that built?
That too is on the council Monday night, to finally convey that land to them, to that developer. And that has gotten all of its approval. There was a glitch on the state's end recently with the, I'm blank all of a sudden, with one of the tax credits that they were getting for that project got hung up in the state level. That's fixed, so that's a go. We will give them the property this Monday night, and that will be built soon.
Now, that is not affordable housing, isn't that market rate housing?
So that is going to be affordable housing. A portion of it will be affordable housing because of the IEDA grant that they got, the money. So with that, and I think I can't remember the percentages, William, but it's a portion of that has to be affordable housing in order for them to get that money.
But there will also be businesses and shops there at a certain level?
At this point, there's no retail involved with that. That's going to be all just housing. Brent Dahlstrom is the developer, and he has a potential for a second building that will be retail, and that's still very much in the works.
Yeah, because that's a very interesting location, I think.
Oh, it's incredible, it's fabulous.
And you've got a lot across the street from that, which is empty. That used to be a bowling alley that was torn down.
Yeah, that's not ours, though. We don't own that. You know, you're talking about the Boland site, and that's privately owned at this point and being privately marketed, but it's certainly a key spot.
Okay, well, I'm going to kind of wrap up here. We may have a few minutes left or so, but I just wanted to say that we really appreciate you coming here and talking to us about the state of the city. And I know that we have a lot of hardworking people in town that are trying to make these things happen, to take care of the downtown. I noticed that downtown, you've got a lot of repair work on your sidewalks and curbs. And so the town is actually looking, what would you say, spiffy maybe?
Well, we're trying, William, and there would be some people that would vehemently disagree with you on that, but we have our challenges every day. But it seems like that we have a small group of people, a handful of people that just can't be satisfied unless they're complaining about something. And that is so the minority. We have 23 department heads that come to work every single day for the city of Waterloo. They come with one goal in mind, that's to do the best job they possibly can for the citizens of Waterloo. And they do a fabulous job. We miss our mark occasionally, not often.
Okay, I do have to wrap up now, and I want to thank the audience for listening, and make sure to take an active interest in this city, this going city, as we like to say. You can watch meetings available on YouTube or through the city website, or keep informed by reading the newspaper. If you have concerns or questions, be sure to contact your council representative or the appropriate city department. Information can be found at www.cityofwaterloo.com. I see you've improved the ability to think at the website, or search for the City of Waterloo, Iowa. We have a participatory government, so please evaluate the issues, discuss them with your friends and family, make your concerns known, and in every election, vote. It is your right, it's your privilege, and your duty. A final note, we have underwriters that support this public radio station, so be sure to thank them for their support, and you can be a supporter as well. Consider keeping us on the air by making a financial contribution of any amount. It's important. Until next time, keep in mind that city business is your business, so be sure to mind your business. This has been the Mayor's Update. I'm William Kay, and you are listening to KBBG 88.1 FM, Waterloo. Good day.
Perfect. That always goes so quickly.
It does. What am I going to ask you?